and welcome to another video coaching session. Now, in this lesson, we're going to focus on critical path. What's a critical path, how to create a critical path, and techniques that you'll need to know. Also, we're going to review how to create multiple critical paths. You can use this in a number of scenarios, including if you have a master schedule with multiple projects in it, and you'll want to be able to view multiple critical paths. So let's get started.
Okay, now we're going to look at understanding critical paths and multiple critical paths. So basically, when you have a project schedule, as you know, you'll have multiple tasks in your project schedule. Now in this example, I have a master schedule open with multiple project schedules already inserted into it, and we have another lesson on how to create a master schedule. But what I want to show you is, for example, in the first project schedule, you can see we have some example tasks in here. Now, in terms of understanding critical path, what you need to know is that critical tasks are tasks that will cause your project to take longer if any of those tasks go past their finish date. So when you create your project schedule and you've formatted your text styles, particularly for critical tasks, to red, and I've already also formatted my text styles for milestones to blue. So in my schedule, if I have any critical tasks, they will appear red. The other thing I did was I want my Gantt bar over here on the right hand side to also display red for any critical tasks. And what I had done previously was I went into the Gantt Chart wizard, which we walked through in one of our first lessons, and I formatted the Gantt chart so that the critical path would show. And just to show you really quickly, what you would do is select Custom Gantt, and I personally accept the defaults. It says here, select style options for Gantt bars representing critical tasks. I leave the default as red. And flip through here. I like to see baseline and slack, or if you just want to see slack, you can show that, because slack will help you know which tasks are critical. Anyway, I'm going to pretend I'm baselining the schedule. I want to see baseline and slack. And then I'll show the dates on my task in the Gantt chart. And I'll show the links, and then I'll format it. Okay, so that's already actually been done. I just walked through it again to show you really quickly. So in this example, task number 5 here says, this is our placeholder for a task, and if you look, you can see it's supposed to start June 7th and end on June 14th. Now, this is just an example project schedule. Needless to say, you would always have a column here to show how much work you've completed. So let me add the %complete. But anyway, this particular example task, oops, let me just resize this column here. Number 5 has a slack in it, and you can see that line here that shows that there's slack. Okay. So what that means is if this task takes longer than 6 days, there's still some room here. It can slip. This is showing us graphically that this particular task has slack. And actually all of these tasks do. They have lots of room. They don't have to, if their finish date shifts, it's not going to impact the full project's end date. Okay? Now, if we open up another project schedule I happen to have in here, you can see these are appearing, these tasks, these are placeholders for tasks, but anyway, they're appearing red, and that means they're on the critical path. And if we scroll over to October, right now we're in June and July, so if we scroll over to October, there we go. So you can see these tasks have no slack. There's no line, the black line that we saw up here. which means that if they shift, they're going to, there's no room, there's no wiggle room, and if they shift, then the project end date is going to move out. So again, critical path are the tasks that will cause your project to take longer if any one of the tasks is late. And so completing these tasks on time is critical to keeping the project end date. And if you set up your project schedule by formatting the text styles and formatting the Gantt chart, you'll be able to graphically see critical path, and you'll be able to respond to any changes in your schedule that may impact your project's end date by setting up this graphical interface. Now, I just want to point out that non-critical tasks can become critical if you use up the slack that's available in them. If I'm not going to take the time right now to do this, but if I went ahead and rearranged these tasks end dates and used up the slack, then these would automatically turn red because we formatted our schedule. So tasks that are not critical can become critical in your project schedule. Now, I'm going to expand all the tasks here. Show, oops. Give me 1 second here. I want to show all subtasks, so I've expanded everything here. And now, if you want to view the critical path, the critical task in your schedule, there are a couple of different ways to do it. Besides graphically setting things up so that the text appears red, the filter for the Gantt chart view will allow you to show critical tasks. So right now the filter here says all tasks, but we can select critical, and then it shows just the critical tasks. And then you can turn that off again by going to show all tasks and seeing all of your tasks. Now there's another option as well. You can use the tracking Gantt view. So if we go to the view bar over here on the left hand side and click tracking Gantt, and if I scroll down here and move over to October, actually let me change my timeline here because this is showing the time scale right now is showing weeks and days, and that's kind of too granular. So let me show months and weeks so that we can see our Gantt chart better. Okay, there we go. And what I'm going to do here is in this Gantt chart, I'm going to format it to show critical tasks as well. I'm just going to step through this really quickly. So this has been formatted, and now that I scroll over to October, we can see the top bars are, the bar here is showing critical task as red. And let me actually modify the duration of one of these tasks so you can see how it changes. So I just want to change my view so you can see what I'm working on here. All right, and we'll just use this task here, number 45. Actually, one of the things I need to do from this view is format the text styles as well. So let me just do that really quickly. I find formatting the text styles helps to be able to see what's going on in your schedule more easily. So each view has its own formats which you can apply. Okay, so now we're going to change this. Let's say this task is going to take 5 days, and the end date will be on the 19th. We'll keep the end date on the 19th. Okay, so now this task changed because of the predecessor relationships, but let's just focus down here. Let me hit save, and the changes that are highlighted will go away. Now you can see that this task has slack. It has a day here before it is supposed to be done, and you can graphically see that. Now, one of the nice things I like about the tracking Gantt view is when you mark your tasks, let's say we mark this 25%, actually make it 50 so you can see the change in the Gantt bar. You can see there's an indicator here that's increasing. There's a little thing that's showing you graphically the progress that you're making. So I'm changing this to 75% and watch how this adjusts. See, it became 75% of the bar. If I make this 90% complete, the bar fills in even more. So the tracking Gantt is just another way to view what's going on in your project schedule. And you can always change the format of the Gantt by right-clicking in the Gantt chart area, selecting bar styles, and by default this is what you'll see. As I scroll down, you can see the information here, but you can always basically select an appearance and change it. You can change the color, you can change a pattern. There are various things that you can do. So most people, when you're working with the project schedule, you have one critical path for your project schedule. But let's say in this case we're actually working in a master schedule. We've already inserted different project schedules into this master schedule, and let me expand them all. And let's say you wanted to be able to show multiple critical paths. Well, in order to do that, what you do is you go to the Tools menu item and select Options, and then click on the Calculation tab up here. And down toward the bottom in 2007, you'll see Calculate Multiple Critical Paths as an option. So if you check that on, project will show the critical path for each network summary of tasks that you have in your schedule. Notice also in this calculation tab that you can define how a task becomes critical. And it says here, tasks are critical if slack is less than or equal to 0. You can make that 1 or 2. You can change the duration. You can't go below 0 though. And then you can define that as default so that it always changes in your project schedule. So by default, if there's no slack, then it's a critical task. But let's say you want to set it if there's 1 day slack, then it's still not a critical task. I'm sorry, if a task is less than or equal to 1 day, then it'll be a critical task, as opposed to, by default, 0. So if it's less than or equal to 0 days, then it's a critical task, or you can make it 1 or 2 days. You can identify how many days you want, and you can control that. So let me make this 0, and we'll click on OK. And now you can see that because, again, this is a master schedule, I have 3 projects within this program, and now I can see multiple critical paths. Previously I only had 1 in here. And now you can see red. So it's looking at each of these projects separately, as opposed to previously it was looking at all 3 and having and we saw the critical path based on the end date for the last project, which is way out in October. So now this project, which starts in June and ends in July, has its own critical path, and this project, which starts in August and ends in September, has its own critical path, and this project, which starts in October and ends in December, has its own critical path. So previously, the way project was doing it was looking at the whole program and had 1 critical path. Now we have 3 critical paths because we turned that option on. And if I go over to June, you can see it's not thinking about the other projects below, and it's only looking at what's happening within this schedule and determining whether or not there's any slack. And we can always change the slack. Again, if this has to be done by the, let's say, 17th, okay, and then I hit save. So I moved it from the 14th to the 17th. So let's say, so this task right now is scheduled to end on the 14th, but because this section is defined to end on the 17th, and the 14th is a Monday, and the 17th is a Thursday, that means we have 3 days slack. And now this task appears black. There's a little black line here for slack, and it's no longer red. Okay? So working with master schedules, I found turning on the multiple critical paths option very helpful.
Okay, so I hope you found that helpful, and make sure you take a look at the homework below. And of course, if you have any questions, you're always welcome to contact me. Please open a ticket at ineedsupportplease.com, and either I or someone from our support team will get a hold of you right away. Thank you, and I look forward to seeing you in our next lesson.